So, Matthew,
Hello, everyone.
My name is Mathieu Cote.
how did you first get into horror?
I remember having nightmares about Jabba the Hutt.
Oh my. Have you had any paranormal encounters or any scary experiences that have happened to you?
I married a witch.
Oh,
Being one of the main faces of the game, is there a lot of pressure that comes with that?
As soon as you release it into the wild, as soon as you put it into the player's hands, not your game anymore. When you do something like release Nick Cage, but then the next day you sit down and you barely have time to enjoy basking in the pleasure of that surprise you managed, because the next day you're sitting at work going, how do we one up that?
DBD's also getting its own movie. Are you involved in that in any way?
Yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Campfire Chats. I'm Luke and as always I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Alfie.
Hello everyone.
This time we are also joined by the head of partnerships for Dead by Daylight, lover of horror, bow ties and Lego, Mathieu Cote. Welcome to the Campfire. How are you doing today?
Hi, that's quite a delightful introduction. Thank you very much. And accurate, so I'll take it. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Warm, but happy.
Thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy day to come on to our show. We massively appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
I absolutely love doing this. So these are the fun bits of my day. And thank you for inviting me.
So, Matthew, let's go way back. How did you first get into horror? What were your earliest memories?
Ooh. I've always been a bit of a wuss when it comes to horror. Like I remember having terrible nightmares when I was a kid, but I have an older sister and she'd show me stuff. She showed me The Exorcist when I was way too young. But funny enough, like just to give you a range of my horror, how much horror affects me. I remember having nightmares about Jabba the Hutt when I saw Return of the Jedi for the first time. I thought he's such a terrifying creature. So yeah, from early on, I've always been a very affected by horror. I do enjoy it as a way to tell stories. I think it's extremely powerful. But because I'm so affected, I tend to not consume mounds and mounds of it. Although the last 10 years I've sort of changed that a little. But yeah, it's always sort of been part. Also, it's the aesthetics to me. That's why for things like metal music has a lot of common aesthetics and iconography with horror, which I really enjoy. Yeah.
Would you say before working on Dead by Daylight you weren't as big of a horror fan as you are now?
I was certainly not as well informed and well versed in the horror world. It was more of a piecemeal approach for me. But since then, the depth of my knowledge and also my appreciation for the art style has grown tremendously. Yeah.
I would definitely say.
But important to know also, especially during development, I mostly play killer. And the reason for that is because I usually don't like to be scared. So when you play killer, you don't get scared. You do the scaring. And that's a role where I'm much more comfortable.
What was the last horror film you have watched then?
The last one I watched was Sinners.
Sinners.
And
it's quite a new one, isn't it?
So good. Yeah, it's quite recent. And it's funny because it's not accurate to describe it as a horror movie, but anything else you try to describe it as is inaccurate. It is a masterpiece, no matter how you look at it. But it's a good horror movie. And just before that, I watched Long Legs.
Oh, yeah.
And that was also super fun.
Is there a certain genre that you tend to stay clear from, one that scares you the most compared to others?
Torture porn is not my jam. Like, I don't enjoy just watching people get tortured explicitly for the sake of graphic violence. That's my least favorite, let's say. There's some good ones in there, but it's my least favorite.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
What would you say was like? Obviously, you've mentioned what you like about the horror industry and the general theme of it, but what would you say was that original moment when you realised you wanted to get into the video game industry?
The video game industry is a very different thing, and uh, funny enough, I was on what do you call like unemployment or whatever. It was between jobs at the time, and when you do that, at least here in Quebec, when you do that once in a while, you have to go in for like orientation sessions or something, with people that'll help you get back into the workforce. And I was young at the time and a little bit clueless, but I met a ridiculously inspiring woman there, and I sort of told her my story and just rambled on, and she's like, you should work in video games. And I sort of laughed and went, no, no, people play video games, they don't work in video games, that's not how it works, nothing. She's like, no, 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 it's an actual career, you could do that. And then there was sort of a switch at that moment when I realized video games had always been a an obstacle for me, as in they were in the way of my studies, they were in the way of my work. I'd much rather be playing video games than doing whatever it is that I was meant to do at the time. And so I took a huge gamble and took a big loan and took a class for video game development, and that was one of the best decisions I've made in my life, and that was 20 some years ago.
Wow. Did you have a favorite growing up?
A favorite what?
Game.
Oh, a favorite game?
Yeah.
There's a lot of games that stick to me. I started playing games. I mean, the first time was probably like when I got a Nintendo, like the old school one, but I didn't fall into it as much as the first time I got my hands on a Commodore 64. And that really opened a door for me. There were so many different games. There's so many different ways to interact with stories with it. I remember like Jumpman. I played a ton of that. That's old though. And all the series, like the now I can't think anymore, but like Police Quest and all the quests one really got to me. Even Leisure Suit Larry, although I didn't really understand at the time most of the jokes in there. But yeah, that's sort of when I started like eating games all the time. And then there was a lull later on, at teenage years, I guess. And then I fell back hard when I left home, and then I had a computer in our apartment. I was with roommates, and then we played all the time. And when we weren't playing video games on the computer, we were playing tabletop RPGs, which was kind of nice.
Nice. Would you say any of those games that you played growing up translated in any way into your work?
I think it's not a specific one, but I think it's the aggregate, right? It's the fact that you play games and you play games, whether it's a tabletop game, whether it's a board game or card game. All of these, like each and every one of them, has one little mechanic helps, put you in the right frame of mind, or an art style, or just a way to tell stories, or any of these little bits and bobs. They sort of end up in your toolbox. And the more you consume, at some point you realize that when you're facing a challenge, you're trying to build a game, and then you're not exactly sure how this bit should fit with this bit. And then you look back at your toolbox and you have the exact right widget that would be perfect to translate this into that. Yeah, that's a very interesting avenue of investigation. I think this could be a subject for a couple of hours of rambling on.
We got the time for it, but well, working on DVD, what is something you've learned from your career then that you wish you had known when you first started out?
Working on DVDs, probably the one of the big learnings, and again, that I could probably list 20 and each one of them would be valid, but the one that comes to mind right now is the fact that we worked on this game. let's say the 20 or 30 people that were part of the development team. And we worked on this game, and we sort of played it regularly and talked about it, and we sort of obsessed about it for like a year for the development time. And then we were confident about what we wanted the game to be and how we wanted things to go. And as soon as you release it into the wild, as soon as you put it into the player's hands, you have to accept the fact, embrace the fact that it's not your game anymore. It becomes something bigger, and it becomes someone else's game. It's the player's game, and their opinion of where this game should go is more important than yours. And that's a lesson in humility to a certain extent, but it's also about being able to listen, and it's not just blind obedience either, because if you do that, you're doomed, right? The internet, like a person on the internet is rarely, the average person on the internet is usually, it's a bad point of data to make a decision on. But a large group of people and trends and the sort of mood of the moment and those conversations are incredibly important. And that's why immediately we started building like community management team, influencer management teams, even player insights, we call it now, but it started as just one guy doing his thesis, like sort of analyzing the data of how our players play the game and what they like, what they don't like. And we realized very quickly that this was critical for the continued success of the game.
Being that you're one of the main faces of the game and the negotiator for bringing in the licenses, is there a lot of pressure that comes with that role? And if there is, what are some ways that you deal with said pressure?
It is a lot of pressure. And in the last 10 years, it changed the way that pressure was applied, also the way it was received by me, because I changed, I think, quite a lot in the last 10 years. It doesn't really lessen, it changes, because, for instance, the conversations when we're trying to get a new license, the conversations we were having 9 years ago trying to convince people that we were relevant enough for them to allow us to put their license in our game is not the same as we have today, where sometimes we talk to people and we go, I'm sorry, you're just not significant enough for us to put you in our timeline, which is exceedingly busy right now, and it's locked until 2027, right? So the conversations are different, but the pressure is not lessened in any way, right? When you do something like release Nick Cage, which I'm very happy to say we managed to surprise people. We even managed to keep it under wraps, and it came out as a huge surprise, and we blew their minds, and it was awesome. But then the next day you sit down and you barely have time to enjoy basking in the pleasure of that surprise you managed, and that really, we did a really good thing right then, because the next day you're sitting at work going, how do we one up that? Now that we've released Nick Cage to the surprise of everybody, how do we one up that, right? And that's also quite a lot of pressure.
So we're now in the 10th year. Why do you think the game has made it this far at its current state?
Because it's fun.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
I think there's a couple of things. Clearly, the dedicated work of nowadays about 300 to 400 people working every day on this is in no small way responsible for this. But there's a couple of points. I think that what I was saying earlier about listening to the community and understanding that it's not our game, but it's someone else has visions of where it should go, and listening to that is very important, and it's part of the success. But I think there are a lot of other games that try to do what we've done in the asymmetrical sphere, and none of them have had the staying power of Dead by Daylight. Some of them had measures of success, but and I'm certainly not saying they weren't good games, but they didn't have the staying power. And I think that one of the reasons why people still play after 3,000 hours of playing Dead by Daylight, after sometimes 4, 5 years, 6 years of playing the game, is that we very early on accepted and embraced the fact that this was going to be a very chaotic experience. It's not meant to be balanced like a sport or a really, really tight thing like chess or League of Legends. And that's why we don't have like official tournaments either, or even the scoring at the end of the game is rather cryptic and not that relevant. Like we don't put that much emphasis on it, because it's about the chaos. It's about what happens moment to moment in this game. It's about the surprises, and I think that sort of unexpected, that continually reinvents itself, is a huge part of the longevity of Dead by Daylight for sure.
I think as well, a lot of people get excited for all the new upcoming chapters and licenses. So
Of course.
there's always something new coming to the game. That always, again, brings in more players. FNAF being
Of course.
a major one.
Yeah, FNAF is an example of that. But the thing is also, it can't just be visuals, because I don't think that would work as well. One of the very critical thing for us is that whenever we release, especially with new killers, they need to change the game. They need to change the way you play, to shake the meta, force people to reevaluate their strategies and their comfort zone, and bring in essentially a new game, right? And we've certainly done that with Springtrap for sure.
Would you say in the early stages of the game, did you have a plan to bring in licensed characters, or was this something that was decided later on?
No, the format for the new content being added, like the chapter, or at least the vague shape of the chapter, was sort of part of our thought process, just because we felt like, because it's very narrative, because we're telling stories, it sort of makes sense to be able to tell a different story and having another chapter in the story, hence the name. The licenses sort of, it was a natural thing to think about. But the thing you have to know is, before we launched the game, we had no plan to continue working on it.
Right.
The game was meant to be, it wasn't an early access. It wasn't any of that. It was just, we're releasing a game. We really hope you guys enjoy it. And we're going to go back to what we do at Behavior, which is making games for other people. And that was it. That was the plan, right? So the success, the immediate explosion of attention and players that we had, sort of forced us to say, okay, let's do more content. And then we started doing chapters. And the first chapter we did, we were sort of ready for it. We knew what we wanted to do. It was the nurse and and we actually released it for free just because we could at the time. We're like, we're making so much more money than we actually anticipated. We'll just do it for free, grow the team, and start really seeing what this game can do. And then the next one after that was Michael Myers. Because the other thing you need to know is Behavior is a company that's been making games for other people for about 30-some years now. Old can correct me, but it's about 30-some years. And so when we released...
33, I believe.
33, okay. And so when we released Dead by Daylight, we already had a very, very strong reputation amongst licensors and developers. We had contacts here and there. We had made games in the past for Disney and Warner and other licensors like that. So we knew who to call. It didn't mean that they would agree, but we already had a bit of a leg up in that sense, right? And we had a strong reputation for being able to take somebody else's property and do something respectful and interesting with it, which is what we built our company on. So we already had a leg up in that thing. And as soon as we got Michael Myers, then it became a different conversation, because the next one was like, hey, Michael Myers is here. Do you want to join? And then Freddy Krueger and Leatherface. And they go, oh, well, by that time, it's already like, now we're building a museum. You see, we have those legends. Are you a legend? Do you want in? And the conversation started being a little bit different.
So was the Halloween license the first one you actually approached, or was that just the first one
Yeah.
that happened to be added?
I answered before you finished your question, and I realized that normally we try not to. I mean, all of those conversations, the licensing conversations are very confidential and very delicate, and you never know what someone else is like. I could say, oh, nobody cares that it was the first one approached, or that, but some people might. But in this case, yeah, it was the first one we approached, and it's the first one that said yes, and it was perfect, and we moved on.
Perfect. That's great. So from those many iconic licenses that you've worked with, are there any stars that you've brought in, like Nick Cage, Matthew Lillard, that you've met? And what was it like meeting them, if you did?
I met none of them in person, but I was on some conference calls when we recorded with Mr. Bruce Campbell for Ash Williams,
Of course.
and that was brilliant. I mean, he's such a funny guy. He's so cool to work with. It was a bit of a dream come true. And then I was lucky enough to be a witness watching as Nick Cage recorded his voiceover. And watching this man work is a gift. He's absolutely amazing. Now, unfortunately, today we have a much bigger team, and there is someone whose sole responsibility is to deal with all the voiceover and managing all those recording sessions. And therefore, I would just be getting in the way if I forced myself into these meetings. Therefore, I don't get the opportunity to see Matthew Lillard or others like that work and do their job.
Have you met any of them outside of work then? Or maybe at a convention or passing by?
None of the ones that are in, except the fictional characters. I've met many Michael Myers and Freddy Kruegers and ghost faces over the years. But the actual people, I've met a couple of celebrities that have left me a bit impressed, but none that are in our game.
Who are those people?
First or second year, we were at PAX, and I was at the booth. I was manning the booth, saying hi to people, and we were approached by Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson, UFC champion for many years, and he streamed Dead by Daylight, and he played Dead by Daylight a lot, and he was very excited to meet us, which was absolutely awesome. And yeah, there's a couple of others throughout the years that came by and said hi. Met Matthew Modine at New York Comic Con. It was great, especially because we were doing the promotion for Stranger Things at the time. He's not in the game, but he's such a cool character. It was great. There were a couple, but listing celebrities is not what this show is about, I think.
With all that being said, in terms of license, is there any licenses who took a lot of convincing, like maybe more than the average one would take?
See, these are the kind of things that I can't really get into. But yeah, without giving names, some of them were much harder to convince. And some of them were just long conversations. You start a conversation, you go, hey, do you think this is cool? And they go, yeah, but exactly, it should work. And then that could be a very long conversation, even though both sides are essentially going, yeah, not exactly sure how we make this happen. Whether it's, there's so many things that come into that, whether it's how we represent the character or when or which characters are included. There's a lot of moving pieces in these conversations that can lead to this taking more time than we wanted. And some of them are super easy, surprisingly so.
So, Five Nights at Freddy's. Who approached who? Yeah. And at what point was this a license you knew you had to get in the game?
We knew from the start, as in, it released around the same time as us, about 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so we've seen it grow alongside our game. And I don't know exactly when, but at some point we're like, yeah, it would make sense to have that in Dead by Daylight. But it needed to be the right time, and it needed also to be the right shape of chapter, because of many reasons, but because one of the things about Five Nights at Freddy is that, and I talked to some other people about that recently, but the main survivor in Five Nights at Freddy's is you, the player. And that is a difficult thing to recreate in Dead by Daylight. And that's why we ended up doing the killer that we did, is because when you're playing as a survivor in Dead by Daylight, if you're facing Springtrap, it becomes a very different experience than, being chased by Michael Myers or someone else. In essence, if you're playing Dead by Daylight and you're being chased by, let's say, either the trickster or the clown, in essence, you're just running away from a killer, and there are variations, but it's the same thing. Whereas if you're playing against Springtrap, you've got the security room, you've got a couple of things that really change the way you play the game, and that was critical for us to do that. And so sometimes it's a matter of us being in the right place technologically and design-wise to be able to deliver on what we think should be the Dead by the representation of an experience that exists outside. And to answer the other bit, we approached them.
What was your initial interaction? Maybe not so much in terms of trying to get it into DVD, but what was your first ever interaction with the Five Nights at Freddy's brand? And if you have had interactions, what was the first game you played in the franchise?
For me, as strangely enough, it was all the merch. I stop at EB Games or whatever, Target, anything, Toys R Us, and then Five Nights at Freddy's was everywhere. And on a very human level, I was insanely envious of that. I think that our merch, there's some really cool stuff that we've done, but we haven't really done it in a way that Dead by Daylight is everywhere. Maybe it's because we're an M-rated game. I don't know. It certainly closes a couple of doors that are open to something that is PG-13. But that's how I first got aware of that. And then I started watching a lot of people play these games. Like I said, I'm a scaredy cat, so a game that's built to give jump scares and freak you out is not made for me. But I did watch a lot of people play because some streamers are ridiculously entertaining to watch overreact things. And then I sort of understood why this game works and why it's so relevant and so prevalent right now. It's everywhere.
Do you remember any of the YouTubers that you did watch play or stream it?
That was my Markiplier phase, honestly.
Of course.
Yeah, he's the guy, right?
It's got to be him.
Yeah.
He is the king of FNAF.
Yeah, there are others, but Markiplier is special.
So, over the course of the development, how much did Springtrap's power change from the initial idea that was proposed? And are there some elements that stuck?
Quite a lot, actually. And it's because when development started, that's when the conversations with Scott started. And he obviously had his own opinions and his thoughts and his guidance, which we absolutely welcome, which means that we had to change a couple of things and try a few things. And the end result to me is again, I feel like it's one of those... I'm not a designer. I don't have that pretension, but Dave and his team and Jason and a couple of others that worked on this, they show that they are exceedingly capable artists that can use the gameplay mechanics of Dead by Daylight as if they were paints and brushes, and they can paint an homage to something using those mechanics as paints. That's how I see it, at least, and I find it I find it impressive and beautiful.
Did Scott already have some knowledge of Dead by Daylight beforehand? And
I mean, yes, I believe so. The first conversations were not directly with him. Obviously, we talked through people, and so I mean, I would assume he had at least heard about us. If not, he did his homework because when we talked to him about our game, he was very knowledgeable and he knew exactly what we were talking about. But that's also what's kind of really cool about collaborating with people who are in the video game industry, as opposed to, let's say, movie or TV, because they know the jargon, they know the sort of issues that we face, the challenges, and it's easier. It's easier in some ways, and then it's more complex in others because then it means that they can get their hands into the machinery quite deeper than others, right?
Are you able to share any of the ideas that Scott had in terms of how Springtrap was represented?
Uh, not specifics, but I can say that, for instance, things like the exact textures and shaders used to represent the sort of fluff of the outfit, the different colors of the different elements in the map, the different representations. He was extremely precise about what he wanted,
Wow.
which makes perfect sense. But it was really neat to have someone who could actually tell us exactly what was needed to be tweaked. Yeah. And also, like when we do the map, for instance, and we want to hide Easter eggs and little winks to different specific things, like he knows his fans better than we ever could. And so he knows what's really important to them, what you want to do something that like the top 1% intense player will get, and they will get a kick out of him, and the others, it'll go over their heads, but it doesn't matter. Like you want to hide a couple of things that the really, really hardcore fans will go ape shit for. Like that's how you've done it right, I think.
Do you know if all of the Easter eggs on the map have been found, or is there still some that have yet to be discovered?
I think we had that question a couple of last week, and we responded. I think that all of them have been found, but I'm not sure that they have all been found by the same people, right? So I'm not sure if one person has found all of them. Probably. I mean, we try to hide things, and we think we're super clever, and we're like, oh, it'll take people ages, and then 20 minutes later, everybody's figured it out already. But in this case, we hid quite a lot, so probably it took up to an hour. I don't know, but it was very well hidden.
Speaking of the map, obviously we got the new map, the new chapter, the pizzeria, and it's a very, very well done amalgamation of the pizzeria from the games, the film, but it's also got some DVD, hints of DVD sprinkled through it. Was that the original plan before talks, or was that something that kind of evolved as time went on?
The map design is always an iterative process, because even though some of our level designers are become extremely experienced at creating Dead by Daylight experiences, once you're in it running around, that's when you can tweak it, right? You have to be able to build a first version that you know is going to be changed, and then you go in and you go, yeah, no, that's not exactly right. Or even stuff like, for instance, the colors, like, oh, when you're here and you look at over there, the colors are distracting, and so it's easy to hide in front. Like, you can't have that. And like all of these things, they have to be played to really be understood. So yeah, the map design is always a very iterative process. It is inevitable that it will change quite a few times before it gets released. That's one of the reasons we have the PTB also, the public test.
Do you have a favorite part of the map?
That's tough. I like the kitchen, just the food prep area, and just because of the like its tight corners, and because like you see so many movies with fights in kitchens, especially like professional kitchens, and I don't know, I just like the mood that it gives.
We're getting a second FNAF movie this year.
Yeah,
Have you seen the first one?
I have.
What were your thoughts on that? Just curious.
it was surprising to me. I did not expect it to go there, and I thought there was some like for some reason I thought it was gonna be not childish because obviously I mean, if you go into the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, it's clearly not for 13-year-olds, although they are allowed to read it. But it was much more intense and deep than I thought it was gonna be. I think that I forgot his name, Josh, the actor.
Hutchison?
Hutchinson.
Yeah, that's one.
I think he did a really good job. It was a really interesting role for him to take, and there was some rather touching bits in there. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd definitely say it was a film for the fans, not so much someone new going in.
I think that if you have no idea who or what Five Nights at Freddy's is, and you just watch this movie knowing nothing else, it probably you're not gonna get as much out of it as a hardcore fan or even just a casual fan, right? Uh, but it still holds up surprisingly well, I think.
Do you have anything you'd like to see in the new one?
More Matthew Lillard.
Yeah,
He was good in there,
he was.
and it's funny because he's done some roles over the years, and most of those roles, I mean, he's a chameleon, right? From one role to the other, he's sometimes barely recognizable. But every time he's a little bit, I don't know what the word in English is, but he's like slightly, not a caricature, but he's just slightly bigger than life. Like his roles tend to be uh, just blown up and bigger. And this one was sort of muted and much more real, and I thought it was a great direction for him to go into, and I hope we see a lot more of what Matthew Lillard as an actor can do.
DBD's also getting its own movie though, by Blumhouse as well. Are you involved in that in any way?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we can't talk about almost. Other than to say that yes, Blumhouse and Atomic Monster are currently working with us on the development of the DBD movie. It is moving forward.
Mhm.
There are things that we will be able to announce in the near future, I believe, and Behavior is very, very involved in the development of this movie. I mean, we're not a company that makes movies, so we have no idea what we're doing, but we are very present. We review everything, and we try our best. I mean, our sole mandate in being involved is to make sure that whatever happens, it is a good DVD movie. Now, as far as being a good movie, we leave that in the very capable hands of the people at Blumhouse and Atomic Monster, who have shown time and time again that they can make horror movies well, probably better than most. And so we're not going to tell them how to do their job, but we're going to tell them how to do DBD for sure.
I know you can't talk too much about what to expect, but do you know roughly when you thought, okay, it's time, I think DBD gets its own movie? Do you know roughly when you thought?
I mean, the first conversations were almost 5 years ago, I think. But back then, it was more conversation about a TV show.
Right.
And that didn't really pan out. And anyway, it sort of got reset and different people stepped in and stepped out and the conversation started again. But most of these conversations were still through Blumhouse. And we've learned to know these people, the people that we work there, whether it's Jason Blum or Ryan Turek. There's a couple of people that we work with there. They're really nice, and they really get Dead by Daylight, and we know that they're working really hard and that it's important for them. Like, I cannot judge if the production is going well or not. I have no point of reference. I make games. If it was a game, I could tell you if the production is going well or not. But since it's a movie, I don't know. Maybe that's how long it takes to make a movie. I wouldn't know. But I can say that the people that I interact with are telling me that they're excited about it, and I believe them, and that we're gonna get something really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the FNAF movie was in production for many, many, many years. It went through so
Yeah.
many iterations. So, yeah, it's not a quick process, that's for sure.
No,
But I think, yeah, we're all very excited for it to come out. Is there anything you
Me
can share on what we can expect from that?
it's gonna
little
be a
sliver?
horror movie. I can tell you that.
Okay, I was a little worried that it wasn't going to be a horror movie. I will say that.
But it's true. I mean, some people pitched ideas that were other, and some had some really cool ideas. And also sometimes it's about like it could make a great movie, and we could focus on this or that. But I think
Yeah.
in the end, we all agree that this needs to be like in the same way that Dead by Daylight was built as a love letter to classic horror
Yeah.
movies from the 70s and 80s mostly. And it ended up incorporating all of horror, even its sort of most remote bits and things that are horror adjacent. But at its core, it is an homage, it is a love letter to the classic horror movies. And therefore, making a more classic horror movie out of it makes sense.
100%. I will say as well, through the years of playing DBD, all the licenses that have been introduced, it's introduced both me and Alfie to so many new like games and films that we've checked out. Stranger Things was a major one. We love that show. So yeah, thank you for that as well. So I really do think, yeah, DBD deserves its own place in the cinematic world.
Yeah,
But moving on, we've got a couple of fun questions to end on.
sure.
So, have you had any paranormal encounters or any scary experiences that have happened to you?
Me personally, no, I can't say that I have. I have never been haunted or possessed. No, the closest I think is I married a witch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wanna dig deeper into that or leave it there?
Sure, she's a little bit known in the DBD community. She used to
Yep.
work on Dead by Daylight many years ago. She's the voice of Jane Romero and the ass of Jane Romero.
Oh,
And yeah, she's in her personal life, like in her professional life, she's still a community developer now working at Ubisoft. But in her personal life, she's a witch. And I'm very happy that she heals me with her home remedies when I'm sick or when I'm not well. It's not too foo-foo, like she's I mean, I was gonna say she's not dancing naked in the moonlight, although I'd be okay with that. But and she respects my not just respects, but she compliments very well my sometimes overly rational scientific skepticism.
nice. Nice. So, although you might not have any experiences yourself, is there a favorite story maybe someone's told you that sort of stuck with you and keeps you up at night sometimes?
Not keep me up at night, but I absolutely love like urban legends and folklore, and I think that Quebec has some very interesting folklore like this. Well, I mean, wherever you're from, your little region has some urban legends and some folklore that the old folks talked about, right? And I think that they are a beautiful window into people's culture and what is important to them and what was important to the people that came before. One of my favorite stories in that genre is La Chasse Galerie, which is very local to Quebec. I don't know. I don't think there's a translation, even though a lot of them were Anglos. But La Chasse Galerie is an old Quebec legend because there used to be a lot of lumberjacks who would just go into the woods and like chop things and I don't know, get furs and whatnot. And they'd spend months and months in the woods without coming back to town or coming back to their house. And so legends say that sometimes they would make a deal with the devil, and so that their canoes would fly so that they could come back home for the holidays. And, for one night, they'd be able to fly over the forest in their little canoes. And the thing is, if they were ever to fly over a church's steeple, then the whole spell would be broken, the canoe would fall, and they would all die and probably go to hell or something. But it's such a vivid imagery of those lumberjacks in their flying canoes. It's very Quebecois, and it's one of my favorites. But there are so many. My dad, when he was working, was an archivist, and so our house was sort of filled with these books about olden days and weird legends and traditions, and I always liked that quite a lot.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look back at that one, see if there's a translation, because
I got you so apparently it's called
the flying canoe or the bewitched canoe.
Oh, okay.
But
in English, yeah.
All right, I'll look into that. You posted a YouTube short
What
a
did
while
I
back.
do again?
Well,
Okay.
a member of your team posted it, but you were in it.
Okay.
You were in Montreal.
Oh yeah, the visits to the haunted places. Yeah. That was super fun.
Are there
I
any
enjoyed it quite
of
a lot.
those places you visited, or any stories about those you
Well,
can
we went
share?
to shoot in those places, and it's funny because someone on our team was sort of hesitant about walking into those places to film, and I'm like, come on. But they're beautiful places around Montreal. It was really nice to do. I kind of enjoyed that. There's nothing terrible that happened there. I wish I could tell you stories, but unfortunately, I try not to lie so much. So no, there was nothing terrible. I didn't come back with a weird possessed anything. None of the dolls in my house started talking to me more than usual. No, all good.
So the final question, this is a nice little fun one. If you yourself was in a random horror movie, what do you think your character archetype would be, and do you imagine yourself surviving?
Oof. That's funny. I like if I go to the extreme cliche, like cabin in the woods sort of thing, I'd probably be closer to the stoner, although I haven't smoked weed in decades. But that's probably the closest, because I'm definitely not a jock. Very unlikely to be considered a virgin by any stretch of the imagination. The stoner would be closer, but I'd probably be the annoyed guy going, no, we're not splitting up. That's dumb. No, just, yes, my phone still has some signal. Because I charged it because I'm not an idiot. I'd be the ridiculously rational one trying to get everybody to survive, I guess.
Well, that's it. That's all we have. What a beautiful way to end
I would
that.
not fight back or go like, no, I can take him. Like, no, I'm not chasing a maniac.
I'm sure you can
chainsaw.
take him on. I'm sure you can take him on.
I have a bad back. I'm tall. I can be intimidating, but don't ask me to put out. And that's
You're
not
very
gonna happen.
agile. You're very agile on your feet, also.
Okay.
No, it's true. But Mathieu did ballet. No, it's true. You're very agile on your feet. I'm
Okay, sure.
You could, yeah.
I can dodge, is what she's saying.
Could we perhaps get a legendary skin for Dwight of Mathieu Cote?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Oh.
No. I'm in two games that I worked on over the years. And I never put myself in game. It was always done because someone either made a joke, or the very, very first game I ever worked on was a NHL game. And I'm one of the like the whole team was put, like we had our pictures and our names as free agents, so you can buy us cheap. And but yeah, so no, I'm not gonna put my face in Dead by Daylight. That's not happening. People have seen my face enough, I think.
Are those games still available to play? Could people play those?
Yeah, there's two games. There's NHL. I think it was NHL 04 or 05, the 360 version, and then there's a game called Wipeout Create and Crash, which is based on the TV show where people get banged over the head by big rubber mallets.
Oh yes, we had a show like
and
that.
So yeah, the art director at the time made me into a character in there because he thought that was super funny, and he never told me. It just sort of popped up at some point. I'm like, hey, I didn't approve that in the game, but that's what happened. I think I have a picture. I'll try to find it for you.
I would love to see that. That sounds great. It's pretty much it from us, unless you have anything, else you want to promote, plug, or say.
I mean, I wouldn't know what else to say. I think we've gone around a lot of fun stuff. I really appreciate you guys' mood. It's really nice. I needed something kind of chill and pleasant today, and you've totally delivered that. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I mean, the game speaks for itself. If you're a fan of DBD, you're happy because right now we have so much stuff coming out that's really cool. The Witcher that we released just a little while ago, and the Five Nights at Freddy's have really shaken things up quite a lot. And like I said at the beginning, we constantly ask ourselves, how do we one-up that, right? How do we do bigger and better and more impressive next time? So I guess stay tuned. More coming.
Sounds exciting. Can't wait. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us today.
My pleasure. A great pleasure.